My friend Dan, he's got a podcast, 'cause all comics need a podcast, and nobody had a podcast called The Art of Bombing. So Dan went out and bought a tape deck. Who knows why he bought a tape deck? Now podcasts don't get played on tape decks, but Dan is from the 80s. So hey there, all you funny jerks, come talk to Dan about your work. Tell him all about your worst times. It's The Art of Bombing.
Welcome to the Art of Bombing Live. I'm your host, Dan Bublitz Jr. Thank you, everybody that's tuning in tonight on a Tuesday night. It is Tuesday, November 23rd. Thanksgiving is right around the corner, only a couple days away. So thank you guys for joining us. Real quick, I just want to let, if you're watching this stream through the Facebook group, I got to let you know you're going to come up anonymous. I don't know why that is, but I don't know who you are. But Facebook user that said hi, hello, appreciate you watching. I'm pretty sure I know who it is, but I don't know for sure. So just keep that in mind. If you're watching in the Facebook group, we can't actually see your username. But thank you for watching. I'm glad to be back. The podcast has been on a hiatus since October, just September, October. I don't even remember when I put it on hiatus. It's been that long, but we're back. It is Darren. Okay, I knew it was you, Darren. I figured it was you, but I didn't want to guess. But we're back. So we're back. But here's the thing. I wanted to add something new, and I've been working behind the scenes trying to figure out how we can make this a little bit of a better podcast. And what I came up with was doing as many of these live as we can. And by live, I don't mean like with a live studio audience. While that would be cool, I mean live streaming. That's what we're here to do. We're going to live stream as many episodes. Just to let everybody know watching, Tuesday night is not going to be the typical stream night. We're just doing it. This is a special episode because I have a special guest tonight who I'm going to wait to bring them in, but I just want to let you guys know that I think our plan, and we'll talk more about this later in the episode, but I think our plan is to try to do these streams on Sunday afternoons. That's going to be kind of the goal going forward. I see somebody, a Facebook user, is working on a sidecar while watching. I know who that is. Thank you, Lee, for watching the stream while you work on your sidecar. So without further ado, I could sit here and get all caught up and babble, but I got a special announcement. I'm very excited for our guest tonight on the first Art of Bombing live stream, because not only is this person going to be the guest tonight, they are joining the Art of Bombing team. They are going to act as a producer and co-host. They're gonna, they'll be jumping in. We'll be having some conversations. They'll be helping me run things behind the scenes while we're doing the stream. So I'm very excited to bring in the guest tonight, Josh Shirley, fantastic comedian from Kansas City, Missouri. So before we do that, though, you know the rules. Before we bring in a guest, we got to listen. I got to check out their stand-up. And just because we're streaming live doesn't mean we can't do that. In fact, we can. And here we go.
And now it's time for the stand-up soundbite.
Hey, what's up, everybody? All right, my name's Josh. I'm a family man. My wife and I have been married 11 years, but we've known each other like 2. Well, we finally found out we have something in common. Neither of us have ever tried online dating before. We missed it. We missed the whole thing. So we made a plan. We were like, all right, we're going to find each other online, and then we're going to meet up somewhere safe, like at a Panera. So we get out on eharmony.com, we fill out a couple profiles, and we are not compatible. I can't even find her on there. Shouldn't show up in the search. You won't let me find her. That's how different we are, you guys. We try one time to hook up on the internet. and the site responsible for 476 successful marriages a day thinks we need a divorce. I'm like, geez, I get like an 80-year-old. I email eHarmony with her picture. I was like, I want this girl right here. They were like, sir, we're sorry, but you and this woman, you just don't align on any of the 29 dimensions of our profile assessment. And I was like, wait, is address not one of the dimensions? Sir, eHarmony, the eHarmony compatibility matching system only uses things that are scientifically proven to bind one human to another for a lifetime. I was like, we have a kid, goddammit! They're like, not according to her bio.
Welcome, Josh, to the Art of Bombing podcast.
Yeah, great to be here, Dan.
A pleasure to have you. So I mean, people are watching. That's cool. Let's get into this a little bit. Why don't you introduce yourself and just tell everybody a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, all right. Well, I'm Josh Shirley, living in Kansas City, Missouri. Just restating the facts everyone already knows over again. The show's been so great so far. I don't know what you need me for yet. But no, I've been doing comedy for about 6 years. Not only am I excited to be producing on the show, helping out, doing some odds and ends here, but I've also been a great follower of the show for a long time as well. So I got into comedy because I have a background in acting. I lived in New York for a decade, and I did plays and commercials. And I was in a couple of national commercials when I was there, which was a lot of fun. My background is in, I have an education in that. I kind of had a career doing that for a long time. And when I moved back to Kansas City, I had a wife and a kid and a mortgage and all those things with me. So as I moved back here and became increasingly frustrated that I had no way to really scratch the itch of performance, I found stand-up. And so I've been doing that since 2015. And so it's been a great way to kind of perform on my own terms. And so that kind of, led me to the podcast, and, we've performed together and already have some good stories about that. So
yeah.
Here I am, everybody.
We've performed one time together, and we can already tell a story about that one time, which is great. I got to know. So you said that you were in some national commercials. That's pretty cool. What commercials were you in?
Yeah, well, one of them was I shot the day after I got married. It's getting things off to a great start.
That seems pretty on par for entertainment.
yeah. It's I was like,
hey, we're married. We got married yesterday. Tomorrow I can go back to work, right?
Well, yeah. Well, it was the day we got married that I got a call from my agent, and I was like, hey, so I know we're cutting the cake and stuff, but tomorrow we got to fly to Atlanta instead of starting on the honeymoon. And it just, show business, good
show
times.
Business.
Right. So got out, did that. It was for Sprint, and it was when, this is going to date my career a little bit, but it was when GPS turn-by-turn directions were like newish on phones.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So Nextel had this GPS piece to the phone, and the commercial is where a guy is kind of lost, and he's looking for, he doesn't need directions because he has the phone. And so instead of stopping at a gas station to ask for directions, he stops just to get gas. And I play one of the child molesting freaks who like shows up next to the car. And I'm like, hey, man, you need any directions? And the guy's like, nah, I'm good because I have this phone. And I'm like, what spaceship phone are you? What is this? And then like slowly like a gang of other like sort of Deliverance looking dudes kind of surrounds the car, and then he gets scared and drives away.
Wow. I'm going to have to go see if I can find this now. Now I'm curious. Yeah. That's awesome. I knew you did acting before, but I guess I didn't realize you were in you were in national commercials. That's awesome.
Yeah, Sprint. I did one for Bayer, like an Alka-Seltzer commercial, and I did one for UPS. And my UPS commercial was a bit of a bomb, just kind of by itself, like just to stay true to our normal arc. I auditioned for it. I've got like this big part in it. I go to shoot it, and we're on a side street in Brooklyn. So not only do I not have to tell my wife that I'm leaving town for 5 days, but I'm like, I'm going to walk to this commercial and shoot it. So everything's just the best, and then we start shooting it, and it's the I Love Logistics campaign that they ran 8 or 10 years ago. And so it has like a bunch of stuff cut together and a bunch of scenes. And I'm not like the main person in it, but I was kind of the tagline, right? Like at the end of the commercial, you see this girl run out and hug her UPS guy because he brings packages and all this. And, we love our UPS guy. So she comes out and I have this part before I get to her where I have to drive the truck. And they're like, dude, this is the only hybrid truck in existence, UPS. So please don't get a scratch on it. I know you've never driven a truck like this before. I know you don't have the type of license that you need to drive this, but you're going to drive it in the commercial. And like a real UPS guy was there to show me how to do it. And I get in and I drive this truck, and I've never driven a truck this size before. And so the AD, like the second AD on the commercial, gives me the walkie-talkie, and I put it in the cup holder, and I can hear everything they're saying. He's like, we need you to hear when it's time for you to go so you can do that. So the director's like, action. He's like, go. So I drive, and then I come to like a screeching halt, and I fishtail a little bit. Like I really looked like an ass. And then like the guy, like the second AD came back, and he was like, hey, good job. Just go ahead and back it up and try again. And then I do. And remember, I can hear everything that's coming out of this radio. And then I hear the director go, hey, can we get him to do it again? But this time, can you get him to look like he knows what the hell he's doing?
They forgot you were that you had the walkie-talkie.
Yeah.
Or maybe they didn't. Maybe it was like, well, that's how
he'll get the message. He'll get
the message loud and clear. I'm gonna make it look like I didn't say that.
Yeah.
Instead of saying that to his face, I'm gonna be passive aggressive about it.
Right. Yeah. It's over the radio. It's gonna go to, gonna travel.
That's amazing. That's amazing. No, though, that's great. Well, welcome to the team. This is exciting. Yeah. Because I do want to talk to you a little bit too about comedy, and I'm sure you've got a story that you can tell about bombing. And while I'm trying to make this, it's going to be a little bit of a regular episode here tonight, but it's also about our big announcement with the fact that you're joining the team. You're going to be a producer and co-host. You're going to help with some of the different duties with this podcast to keep it going. And one of the new elements is that we're going to be live streaming episodes. So I think before we get too deep into this, I know there's a few people watching, so I would love to get some questions from people if they're, if you've got anything you want to ask about the future of this podcast. Because basically the plan is we're going to try. I'm still going to do some in-studio recordings because it's just when you live in a big town where there's a good comedy scene, you can't tell people not to come to your studio to record. So not every episode will be live streamed, but we're going to try to do at least 2 a month. May only be 1 a month. It really depends on our schedules because you got to remember we're both stand-up comics as well. And so we'll be traveling for comedy, so on and so forth for that. With that said, we are going to try to do as many of these as we can, but then, so what the process is, we're going to have a live stream with a guest. You'll be able to watch it while it's happening. You'll get to hear them tell their story about bombing, what they learned from it. And then we're going to give you an opportunity at, throughout the show, different points of the show, there's going to be some opportunities to where you can engage with our guests, ask them questions, things like that. So it's a really cool element that we're adding to the show with this live streaming. then it'll still be released as a regular podcast. So if you can't watch the episode while we're streaming it, not a big deal. It's still going to get released on our podcast, on our RSS feed, as every episode does. It'll just be a little different than an in-studio recording, obviously, because there's going to be interactions with people watching, because people will be addressing comments like this. Apparently your Aunt Betty and Uncle Bob are in the house, so that's cool. So things like that are going to pop up in these live stream episodes in the audio version. So
that's right. They're in my house. Hey guys, come on in.
They're right there behind you. That would be hilarious. Like,
it is.
We're really not live streaming. It's true. It is Thanksgiving. So there is that. So
Aunt Betty and Uncle Bob never miss a show. So
well, that's good. That's good to have support for that. Can't beat that. That's great. So anyway, if you're watching, wherever you're watching, make sure you follow the podcast wherever you're watching, whether you're on Facebook right now. If you're watching on the new Art of Bombing Twitch channel, that's new. Make sure you follow us there so we can get more followers. The more followers we have on Twitch, the more we can do with Twitch. We're on YouTube. Wherever you're watching, make sure you're following us. And wherever you listen to podcasts, make sure you're subscribed to this podcast so you don't miss an episode. Episodes will be coming back on Tuesdays in December. Our first actual live stream is going to be December 5th at 4:30 p.m. Central Standard Time, because that's our time. And I have a great guest lined up for us too. I'm very excited about this guest. This guest won I believe it was the 2020 San Diego Comedy Festival, or it is 2021 now. I think it was the 2020, but they won the San Diego Comedy Festival, which is a comedy festival I helped start. So pretty exciting that get to have a guest that won a festival that I helped start.
All right. So I did get a question from the audience here. What was the name of your first dog? LOL. From my man, Preston Potter. The name of my first dog was Puff.
Puff.
Yes.
That's not what I thought you were about to say.
All right.
I thought you were going to say something else, and I was like, well, this podcast is about to take a turn.
Right.
Start getting these questions, and it's like, oh. Yeah, so if you have any questions about where we're going with the podcast, that's cool. If you have any comedy questions as well, you can throw them in there. Doesn't seem like we have a lot of questions right now, which is fine. You kind of get an idea what we're doing with the format, but I want to talk to you too, because you can't just join the team without, I know you're an avid fan and you've been listening to the podcast for a while, but you can't be part of the Art of Bombing team and not tell us a time when you bombed. So you need to tell us a story. We got to basically test your credentials.
That's right.
This is the big test. If you don't have a good story, the fans may fire you.
Right. Well, they already have, Dan. When we were showing my viewer count, when we were showing my soundbite, we had 1,000 viewers. We're down to less than 100 now. So I guess we can count that. I don't know. No,
okay, we've got viewers, and that's what matters. That's what matters.
Right. That didn't happen. And first of all, just to clarify, Preston Potter's my brother. He's watching this. Cheers to him as well. They're all
watching from the living room.
Right. Come on in, man. He's coming.
He said it is Thanksgiving.
Everybody's here.
Looks like we got a comment from YouTube.
Yeah. Okay. How do you get involved in local stand-up comedy and improv? Most places. Yeah, that's a pretty legit question. We want to answer that, and then we'll get on to kind of a bomb story, which is what's going to happen to Art by Lizelle whenever that person gets into stand-up comedy eventually. Getting into your local scene. Dan, you want to take that?
Yeah, so I would recommend, it really depends on where you live, because if you live in a town you might, if you live in a smaller town, chances are there's probably not a scene, or if there is, it's a small scene. But the best way to get involved with a local comedy scene is to Google comedy in whatever your city is, or there's a lot of Facebook groups that are dedicated to the bigger cities. So, like as an example, right now I live in the Twin Cities. I'm going to be moving to Denver, but there's a Twin Cities comedy group. There's a Denver comedy group. But look for open mics. That would be the best. And not necessarily if you're not ready to go up and perform, that's fine. But I would start going to some of the open mics so you can kind of watch and see what it's about. And not just the open mics at the comedy clubs, because sometimes the open mics at the comedy clubs are not the same as some of the other open mics that you'll run into. Like an open mic at a bar, it's going to be very different than an open mic at a comedy club, because a lot of times comedy clubs, even their open mics, it might not be a big audience, but they will get an audience, where a bar open mic is probably just going to be other comedians. Now, on the improv side of things, if you live in a bigger city, most bigger cities have improv theaters. And the best thing to do to get involved with that would be the same thing. Either, if you have the capabilities to do so, sign up for an improv class. They can be, they usually run anywhere from $150 to $250 for a class, but they'll go, they're usually 6 to 8 weeks long, like once a week, once or twice a week, depending on the improv theater. But you can take improv classes, or just go watch improv shows too, and don't be afraid to go kind of mingle with the performers, if you think they were funny, whatever, and talk to them. I know a lot of comics that that's what they did before they got into comedy. They just went to open mics, just watched a bunch of open mics.
Yeah.
And then finally, when they felt like they were ready, they signed up.
Yeah, becoming an audience member first is a great way to get into it. Be an honest laugher, but be a good, easy laugher too. And I think that's a good way to get noticed by comedians. They feel good when you're there. And eventually when you're ready, you can get up and try it. That's a great advice.
Yeah. I've seen that a lot and not necessarily where the people still got into comedy, but when there's somebody that goes to all the shows and supports the local scene, they do become part of the local scene. There's in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, where I used to live, it's a smaller scene, but there's a gentleman named Graham that he's a fantastic comedy fan. He goes to most of the open mics. He goes to as many comedy shows as he can. He goes to the improv shows. Like, he's just an avid supporter of comedy. In fact, I did a show in Billings, Montana over the summer, and he happened to be in Billings, Montana the same day that I was doing a show, and he showed up to that show and surprised me. But because he comes to all these shows, all the comics in Sioux Falls know him. He's basically our buddy. He's part of the scene now, and he's not a comic. He's not an entertainer, but he is a staple in Sioux Falls comedy.
Right. Yeah. We've got a guy like that here. Everybody knows him. Nobody knows his last name. His name's Ron. Comes to every open mic, loves comedy, supports the scene, spends his social security check to buy everybody a drink who performs. He's just like, we need more of those guys.
Oh, really do. You really do. And for the record, I do know Graham's last name. It's Wilson. I just didn't say it earlier.
Oh, yeah. He's thanking you now.
Just for the record, we do. Yeah. I do know who Graham's name.
Oh, right. Yeah, I don't know Ron's last name, so I figure no one else does.
Right. No, yeah,
I've got enough of a data set to work with here. So somebody said this, so I really ought to get started on this story. But they were just really excited to hear my bomb story. So I wanted
Let's do it. Let's hear your bomb story.
Redirect to that. Yeah. A couple of years ago, it was before COVID, obviously. And I was going around with this headliner in South Missouri named Bryce Stanley. Bryce is kind of a pretty well-known comic in this area. Got his start in Kansas City as well. And, he's a road comic that that is out getting steady work all the time. And he wanted me to come feature for him in this country club that was down, I think, in Springfield, Missouri. I don't remember what it was. It was, like Wagon Wheel Country Club or whatever. It's someplace. And so I was like, okay, we're going to go perform in front of some rich people. They probably paid for tickets. We're probably going to get to do it inside. Like, I'm thinking, okay, some pieces are falling into place. Before we go, he says, hey, they actually booked a different headliner, but they're still going to let us come to it. And it's this guy. He sent me a video of it. I don't remember who it was.
So they double booked it?
No, they just booked somebody else they wanted and just bumped Bryce down to feature and then bumped me down to MC. Not that that's, there's a stigma among comedians. They think that if you're the MC, you're the worst comic on the show. It's not true. But anyway, that's just kind of how the dominoes fell. And so they get this other guy to come in, and Bryce sends me like a link to something he was doing on YouTube. And it's a bunch of like improv class stuff that he like just gets the audience to do. And it's like, the guy has his own style. He has his own career. I'm sure he's successful on cruise ships or something like that. But like this was just a weird thing. And so anyway, like we're like, okay, they're going to pay us anyway. So we go down there and we're going to open for this guy. So we're down there. And when I walk in, it's right away. It's everything seems to be in place. There's a stage. There's lights pointing at the stage. It's dark in the room. All the chairs are pointing the same directions. There's a bar. They're going to do the dinner, not do the show until after it's over. All of those things are just kind of in the right place, and most comedians, listening to this would be like, yeah, dude, you totally have like all the things that need to be in order for this to be a great show. And so I was like, they paid for tickets. They're here. It's all set up. And I don't know why, but they put us, they had dinner, they had dessert, they had several drinks. And now we have, I think the youngest person in the room watching this was probably 58. And so we have not only just, an average age of like 70 watching this show, but we have a lot of really old drunk people now. And I thought that when you got older and you got drunk, somehow, you were still able to control yourself. That's
a little more well-behaved.
Yeah. Or some more elegant sort of way of being drunk. You just get quieter and your advice just is a little worse or something. I don't know.
You're stoic, just with bad advice.
Right. Yeah. Where's that young man that's going to write the novel about me? It should be here anytime. So these people are fucking out of control. Like, just not listening to anything. And so I'm the MC. So I get up to try to start taking control of the room and get them going. This is a comedy show. And I get up and they're all just talking to each other. And so you've probably experienced this before as well, Dan, but when you're in a room like that where everybody knows each other except you're the outsider. And I, at that point in my career, hadn't really considered that could be a bad thing. But honestly, it was just like, I got up and I started, and I have this bit that I open with in situations like that. Sometimes I'm doing some crowd work to try to pull people into it, but that's not working. So I go into this stupid joke that's really about, trying to get, trying to get people to kind of recognize, hey, we all have that one friend that's, that drinks a lot, and we need that friend to compare ourselves to make ourselves feel better. That's the premise of it. And it usually gets people who are in a drinking scenario in a bar kind of behind it. And it's kind of something that I can kind of use to move the room forward after I tell it. And as I'm doing it, they're like, that's Larry. That's Larry. Oh, you're talking about Larry. And the guy Larry's there. And he's like, yeah, that's me. I'm Larry. They're like trying to get him to talk during the show. And it's just total mayhem. And so this thing has just gone off the rails. And just when I think I can kind of start bringing them along, like I start getting into some material, they're sitting and looking at me at least. And this lady that looks like Liza Minnelli stands up, and she has a pitcher of water that she's trying to pass over the table to somebody on the other side of the table, and drops it and just breaks glasses under that. Like she drops it like a glass pitcher onto glasses, and everything just explodes. And it's just absolutely, and obviously I got to call this out. I got to talk about it. And so we're having this, me and Liza are just having banter, and she gets up and just leaves, just walks out and never comes back. And everybody's talking about wherever, I don't know what her real name was, but they're all talking about where she went, like, it was terrible, man. And we never got the room under control. And so I eventually am like, okay, this has gotten pretty bad. And your next comic is, and so I bring up Bryce, and he does what he can with him. And then I bring up the last guy, and as bad as I thought I had it, and as bad as it went for Bryce, this last guy, his material was really trying, it was totally dependent on the audience cooperating with what he wanted them to do. It was the kind of stuff like getting like a really small woman and a really big man up at the same time, and like doing some kind of like 8th grade science experiment where, like, because they're different distance away from this big bag, he can't fill it up with air, but she can. And instead it's just people tripping. And it was absolutely crazy. And we just kind of disappeared after that. It was pretty insane, man.
It's one of them shows where you just like slide out the back door. You're
right.
Just like, I'm out of here.
Yeah, Bryce wanted to sell some merch, and I think he did. Like, he sold like a decent amount of merch, but we got out of the room and just he set up his stuff and sold a little bit of merch, and people were just, and everybody got in their cars and drove home. That was the best, just most safe.
They're all like, well, they probably didn't have that far to go, right?
No, they didn't. They're like,
but still, don't drink.
That's another thing that happened during my set. That's my house. That's, you see it across the river right there. It's my house. And it's just lights. It's dark outside. Nobody can see.
Can't actually see the house.
Yeah, it's just lights reflecting off the like manufactured lake somebody dug with a bulldozer and whatever. It was. Wow. It was insane, man. And what made it, in a lot of comics listening to this would probably say, okay, I mean, I've definitely seen worse than that, but the sort of misdirection of thinking it was going to be a great show is really what made it so insane.
Yeah. Because you go in with them expectations, and I don't know if it's if it is for you like this, but for me, sometimes I'll have these shows where I have like these expectations where I'm like, oh, this is going to be a great show, and it turns out to be terrible. And then on the reverse, on the opposite side of that, I'll have these shows where I go in thinking, oh, this is going to be terrible. And it ends up being like the best show. It has like that opposite effect.
Yeah.
But it sounds like, so this headliner that they wanted, that they bumped you guys for, wasn't even able to get him. Like, they wanted him and then they didn't cooperate.
He had been there before at this place. And so
really?
they wanted at this exact place, and they wanted him back.
But not for the same group. Or was it maybe the same?
I can't imagine a different group ever being at this place since they built it. But
okay, well, that's fair.
but like, if they had seen him before, they didn't remember. I don't know, but because the way because he recognized. I mean, he's enough of a pro to go, look, this place is absolutely crazy, and I'm not gonna be able to do any material, so I'm going to just start doing crowd work. And so he starts by saying, hey man, is that your house? Is that your, and just kind of starts poking at people. And he couldn't recognize when people really just didn't want to be a part of it. Right.
Yeah. So it was almost so they wanted to like talk amongst themselves and kind of be loud and obnoxious, but they did not want to be part of the show.
Right. Right. And it some of them I'm sure did, but when he picked on certain people and stayed on them way too long. Like, you know how you can tell, like, okay, she doesn't really want me to mess with her. And you know, as comics, we never want to mess with anybody or make anybody upset or make people feel uncomfortable. We're just doing it to try and call some attention to the room and try to get to know the audience. And he took it so far beyond that when he would ask questions or like, hey, where did you two meet? They're like, at work. Like, that's it. That's all they wanted to tell you, bro. And he's like, oh, who did who on the copy machine? And like, dude, we're not. Do people have that now? Like,
time or place. I've had that happen where I try to do some crowd work and the particular person I try to talk to was not having it. I was at it was a private gig. It's kind of a weird situation where I got booked to do a Christmas party for teachers at this casino down in Iowa, and their party was at like 8 a.m. So we were performing at, I want to say we were performing at 10 or right in that ballpark, but it was in the AM. And I couldn't help but think, I was like, either they've been partying all night or this is not a fun Christmas party for them because it's in the middle of the day, you know, like, but it was like in this banquet, but it was funny because it was for teachers. And I was like one of the last comics to go up, and there was this lady sitting in the very front row. And that was the other thing that was weird about it. They had the tables in like a big square. And so then it was like an open, like middle. So it was just space. So there's probably 50 feet between this, you know, the people on the left side versus the right. And then, you know, the same way. It was just big open space between them.
Yeah.
Well, then we performed like in front of this stage, which was behind them. So like the one row of people were sitting with their backs to us, you know, if they didn't turn around. Well, when I got up there was this one lady that was just sitting on her phone, not paying attention. And I tried to get her. I made a joke about, you know, aren't you a teacher? Shouldn't you have better manners? You're not supposed to be using your phone. Do I need to take your phone away? You know, trying to be funny because they were teachers. And then I tried to talk to her, and she did not look up from her phone. She just sat there on her phone, did not acknowledge me at all. And yeah, finally I was like, okay, this is not going to work.
Yeah.
I better just try to do some comedy.
Yeah. Gosh, man.
Crowd work does not work when the crowd's not into it.
No.
We're going to take a quick question. Real quick, we've got what comedian, locally or nationally recognized, gave you best insight about failure on stage, and how have you incorporated that learning into your act? That's a good one. That's a great question.
Yeah, it's a solid question. And I was listening to Rick Roberts' show. You've had Rick on before.
I have twice.
Yeah. Great teacher. Like he's one of the few people that I know of that really wants to focus on the craft of comedy and like refuses to accept the idea that comedy can't be learned. Like, because it's one of those art forms, as you know, Dan, that like it's really you have to do it. You have to be in the act of doing it. There's really no way to simulate it. And that's true. You have to work your craft in front of an audience, but there's still a lot of things that you can share with each other to learn.
Absolutely.
And one of the things I heard him say, and I don't know if he was quoting someone or, you know, or if this was kind of his own gem, but he said, are you a guy telling funny jokes, or are you a funny guy telling jokes? And what I took from that was you kind of have to at some point come out from behind your material. And so what I do is I try to work as hard as I can to make the material good. But what a lot of comedians do is not only do they have good material, but they're able to come out from behind that material and really reveal themselves through the material, so that the audience gets to know them in this really intimate way, and they become a funny guy or girl telling jokes. And now I can kind of bring them along and really be intimate with this audience in a way through my comedy or through my bits, and instead of just good, because I can tell the difference even with myself when I'm like, okay, dude, you're just up there spouting your material. You're just saying it. Yeah, you got this punchline. You economized your words. Those are good things. But until you can really use it to kind of come out from behind it, when I think I'm at my best, or when I think any comedian's at their best, is kind of something to aspire to. And that's such a lofty thing to aspire to, that I've kind of used that to all. It's a question I'm always asking, and it's something I'm always doing while I'm up there. And so that's probably one of the most valuable things that's in my head all the time.
Yeah. And I think just to kind of add on to what you're saying there too, it has a lot to do with connecting with your audience. And you're going to be able to connect with an audience when you're more genuine, and that can come through the material.
Totally.
When you're it's really about being vulnerable. When some of the funniest jokes to me, sometimes are on the, kind of sad subjects, but it's not necessarily sad or depressing, but it's because you can tell that whatever the comedian's talking about, whatever the story is, it really happened. They didn't just go write this joke. This is a real thing that happened to them, and this is how they feel about whatever the situation was. And then the thing about what I've always found interesting about comedy is that, we experience things, but we're all human. So we all experience things. Like, that's why when people do material about, being married or, having kids or whatever it is, it connects with audiences because most people are married and they have kids and they have family, and there's all these little things that they can connect with. And because they have, because of those, everybody's kind of in similar situations, those same things happen to them. They just they're just not brave enough to go up on stage and talk about it. Right. So, you get that build that connection there.
Right. Yeah. Good question, Mark. Hey, come on in, Mark.
You've planned this. You're like, I'm going to put on a good show. I'm telling all my family to just hang out in the living room, watch this, switch accounts, ask questions, and then at the end, they're all just it's gonna be like a Saturday Night Live moment. We'll start playing music, and they'll all hover around you.
Do a curtain call. The 12 guys I hired in India
to watch and ask questions. I love it.
Yeah. I
love it. Well, we are coming close to an hour already that we've been streaming. This has been great, but like I said, I'm trying to keep it as close to a real episode as possible, because you haven't been a guest on the show yet. And so I got to know the bumming of bombing, the dreadful feeling that we all get when we bomb. How long does that typically last for you, and how has it changed over the years for you?
Yeah, I can be kind of a competitive person, and so it's I need to beat that last show with my next show. So it lasts, it stays with me, and it eats at me until I'm able to have a good show again.
Okay, well, and that could be, if you're having some off days in a row, that could really, that could be a while. I've talked about it on this podcast. I'm pretty sure I have, but I did. I bombed like 3 times in a row one night. Yeah, man. I went to 3 different open mics. I was like, well, I got to go to the next one because I did terrible here. I got to redeem myself. And then I bombed, and I'm like, all right, one more. And then I bombed again, and it's like, all right, I'm just done for the night.
You're right.
I just need I think what I need is to take a break. We don't need redemption. We need to just stop.
Yeah.
digging that hole.
Yeah,
When you
it's something to learn.
Yeah, oh, it absolutely is. And now when you tell a joke and it doesn't work, and say even if it's an example of maybe it's a joke that is typically does work, but it doesn't that one time. What
Right.
goes through your mind?
Yeah. So I record all my sets, and I hear comics talking about this on the show all the time. And what they usually say is, I record it and I never listen to it. Right. I mean, and that's kind of where a lot of comics, I think,
Fail.
aren't. Yeah. Or they've got a lot of, it's right there, and
Yep.
I listen to my stuff, and I'm really diligent about analyzing that. Yeah, it's very painful. And and so that's pretty tough. It's kind of I'll listen to my stuff, and I'll say, okay, well, what didn't work? And what I also like to do is to kind of keep track of all the sets that I've done, and do kind of write down what jokes I did during that set. And so I know what's on the recording when I go back and listen to it. So when a joke doesn't work, or in that really frustrating kind of example that you just gave, like what doesn't work? Like, why didn't this work? It usually works. And when you go back and listen to that recording, you can find all kinds of stuff, either in the single instance or in the sort of multitude of times you've told it and done that joke. And so in the first kind of hand, like I had a bad night, I have my own time, but one that I had recently, I was like, man, I really don't feel like people were responding to that set, that 5-minute set or whatever it was. I was just kind of working on something at an open mic. And I went back and listened to the recording. And the first thing I heard, or the last thing I heard on the recording, like I go through it and I'm like, yeah, you know what? Confirmed, it was just as bad as I thought. And then at the very end, the host gets up and goes, guys, I'm going to adjust the microphone. We can't really hear back here. And he says that as I'm like kind of going and like shutting the recording off to sit there pissed and watch the rest of the show. And I don't catch that in the moment because I'm processing what happened. And
yeah, you're still in your head. You're still in your head.
Yeah, the world just fades away to a comic after you have a rough set, or even if you have a good set, like both times, like you can't hear anything. And I totally missed that thing in the world that was happening. And I go back and I listen to it again. And it was it was really kind of, that's just one example of how a recording can kind of, that there's not always an easy, go ahead.
I was just going to ask, what are some interesting things that you found from that? Like, I know, like that was a good example, but what are some other little things that you found where you, like you said, you have a set, it doesn't go well, you listen back and you're like, oh, that happened that I wasn't aware of. What are some other kind of interesting things you found?
Well, so that's more of an environmental thing that I found, right? And there unfortunately aren't as many of those to really explain away what happened, meaning it's usually my fault. And so so what I
accountability, baby, accountability.
Totally, man. It is. It's only bad audiences. That's the only thing that ever causes a bad
Yeah,
set.
that's right. I'm the best comedian out there. I can't help it if the audiences aren't good. They gotta be on my level.
What do you want me to do? Just bring me a good audience, you jackass.
Yeah, I'll kill every time.
Right. So typically what it is okay, I totally missed saying this just really important piece of the setup that I usually have in the joke. Or I just tried to call this back and I called something back that I didn't set up, or a joke that I didn't even tell. I did that the other night. I'm like, okay, that's why they didn't get that, because that wasn't even in the set.
I do that all the time, like with callbacks, and sometimes I catch myself in the moment where I'm about to tell a joke that is a callback, and I realize I didn't tell the other joke, and I'm like, well, I can't tell this joke now. Or I can, but I'm like, well, it's not going to get the response it deserves, but that's on me.
Yeah. Yeah. That's right. It's definitely missing callbacks, missing a setup. There's environmental issues that happen. And what helps you spot those things is by having all those recordings. So you can say, all right, I told this joke here, 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 and here. I can go back and listen to that. I got to move around to find it. But I can listen to the joke the last 8 times I told it and go, okay, well, it works when I'm actually setting it up correctly with these pieces. Or you know what? People in small towns don't like it when I say dark shit. Like they can't buy it from me. Or they, I'm in real life. I use a lot of, not a lot, but a sort of regular amount of cuss words when I'm on stage. People, unless I need it for some kind of emphasis, people don't buy that from me. People don't think, I'm a pretty clean comic. I'm not.
I'm the same.
Yeah. And it's, I heard you talking about this. Like that happened. It happened to me. Like I'm becoming clean by by virtue of going through life. That's just what's happening to me. And I can't, maybe I want to be able to tell a dirty joke. Maybe I want to have that in my arsenal or whatever, but I can't just because, hey, people watch you do it and they're like, dude, that's not you, bro.
Yeah. I just did a show last Friday, and the comic that went up before me, I was closing out the show, and the comic that went up before me was a little dirty, not raunchy, but a little dirty. It was adult humor. No big deal. Not like gross, terrible. You know what I mean? Like not like gross comedy, just adult, dirty, and crushed and was doing great. And he did a great job. And I was like, oh no, I got to follow him now. And in my head, I went, I'm going to have to be a little dirtier. And I did a joke that I don't normally do, that I haven't done in a long time, but I'm like, all right, this is the kind of crowd, they're into this stuff. Got like no response on it. Not like I had in the past. Like, used to always get a really good response. Well, there was a couple elements that I found out later because I couldn't hear what was going on, but I guess there was some people at the bar that were being really loud. And so I don't think the people actually heard it. But in my head, the rest of the set, I thought I lost the audience because of that dirty joke. Because they didn't buy it from me. And so in my head, because they really didn't laugh. And then I tried to explain the joke to them, and they still were like, but I think there was still a situation going on with these loud people or whatever. But yeah, it was just weird because I did a set before where it was a theme night and I was supposed to be dirty, and did all my dirtiest material, and it did not go well. I was just like, okay, that's it. I'm a clean comic.
Yeah, that's funny.
Seals the deal. Now you kind of already talked about how you analyze your sets after the fact, but I am curious. We don't have to get too deep into that because we already talked about it. But I am curious, how soon after your sets are you listening to your recordings?
Long enough for me to kind of let the emotional wake kind of dissipate. Like, because after a show, when you bomb or you crush, you have that, you kind of know which one of those things it was, and you have that feeling about it. And either way, you can't be that objective. So I typically find that a few days where I'm kind of like, all right, the high of a great show or kind of the bumming of bombing is kind of worn off. And I'm able to kind of go back and just objectively listen to it. And for different shows, depending on how ecstatic or how pissed I am about it, can kind of take a little while, but around that.
Okay. Yeah. I applaud you, the fact that you listen to your sets and take, and do the work. Cause that's
I obsess about it. If something doesn't work, I really obsess about it.
Well, that's good. That's good. Because I've started getting in the habit of trying to videotape all my sets too, but I hardly ever go watch the video. But a lot of that is so I get used to having just have the videotape going, the video recorder going, so I don't get nervous when I'm trying to do like an actual record like an audition tape or submission tape or something like that. And
Right.
it does help because then you just forget that the camera's going. But
Yeah.
I need to get better at that, going back and actually watching or listening.
When another tag to put on that is to also be just as diligent about the good things that you're doing. Like I definitely want to listen to the bad and why didn't that joke work, and let's get it worked out so that it's good. But I have a tendency to take stuff and shelve it and go, okay, it's really good. That works. I can open with that bit. It's good. And then I turn my attention to other stuff without continuing to hone. Like I was watching that video that you played for the soundbite, which is a few years ago. And I don't use that joke very often anymore. And I kind of looked at it and went, wow, there's still a lot of air in it at the time when I thought it was more kind of good to go. I was like, that's an A-list top tier joke, move on down the road. And I could have made it so much better if I would have continued to be as diligent about it. And you kind of have that, you use it in your set a lot and it kind of sits there and you're really focusing on the middle stuff where you're trying to make it better or get it up to or elevate it to a good place.
Yeah. Do you ever go back, like you said, you as you were watching it, you started thinking about that and how it could have been so much better? Have you evolved it? You know what I mean? Do you ever look at some of your old material and think, oh, I could actually, do something, but I'm a better comic now, so I can take this joke and make it better than I was at that particular time?
That clip you played was from a web series they did in town a while back called Laugh Casey. It was a great time. The guys that put it on did a great job, and
it's filmed very beautifully.
Yeah, man. IX Productions, just a shameless plug for them. Patrick Poe is a great comedian in town. Him and his wife Lolo do a lot of great video work, and they put it on, and they figured out that if you record comics are going to bring people to the show. And that's kind of one of those things that I like to use as well when I'm producing, is to tell the comics, hey, I'm going to film this set. And they're going to be like, well, I'm getting people there. And then people make money and it's a great time. But to kind of segue off of that, like that entire set from that night is 14 minutes maybe. And I'm doing that same set in 5 now. And so
tightened it up.
And I've cut some stuff out. I just don't do it all anymore. But when I kind of go back to the old rack, it's all a lot shorter. And when I do that bid, it's definitely got a lot of the air out of it, and it feels a lot tighter. And it's just over the course of time, you say, okay, I've got to take this, and I don't need this joke that much anymore. So let's just mine the funny stuff out of it and get rid of this shit that I'm holding on to because it's precious to me or whatever. And then all of a sudden you're like, well, I could have done that before, and it would have been funnier before. And it's a great 5-6 minutes, whatever it is right now. And I'm like, dude, so that's what I mean by continuing to use the data that you're putting together to formulate or to self-assess, and you put it to good use.
Absolutely. All right. Well, I only have a few more. We're down to that part of the podcast where we do the fun stuff. But before we do that, I am going to open it up to some questions. I do see there is one. There was a question that came in quite a while ago, but I didn't want to interrupt the flow. And so if you have questions, this is a good time to get them in there. Anything that, if you have questions about the future of the podcast, what we're doing, things about comedy, whatever it is, this is a good time because we are going to be wrapping up this broadcast here in a few minutes. But somebody wrote in, they want to know, Josh, when is the last time you slept in your car while performing on the road?
Yeah, it's funny. I've never done that before.
You're not a comic yet.
See, when I saw that come in, I was like, okay, there's somebody who's been doing this for 30 years and started when they were 16 and has done that a bunch of times. And they're like, man, this guy who started doing comedy when he's 35 hasn't seen what I've seen. Let's test him out. Click. And I'm like, well, yeah, I could make up a story, Facebook user, and tell you, but the truth is,
well, I started when comedy when I was 32, and I've slept in my car plenty of times on the road. So
all right, in my face.
There's still hope for you.
No,
you still have time.
Yeah, all right. Yeah, it's early, Facebook user. It's early, man. I haven't done it yet.
So far, you've evaded it, but
yeah, I don't know. I what I mean by starting later in life is just that, you know, comedy for me is getting closer to being a career that I can make money at and that kind of stuff. But it's not there yet. So I have a support job, and when I get in that situation, I'm in Frankfort, Kansas in January, and I don't feel like driving home. I'm going to a hotel because I can afford it right now. And that's my go-to instead of the car.
Yeah. Well, and that's why, you know, it's not a bad idea if you're a comic and you're not making, you know, a ton of money doing comedy. If you can get a little side hustle, you know, like a support job, it doesn't hurt. So then you don't have to sleep in your car.
Yeah.
Another question. Are you going to ask Josh to pick a number and answer Of course I am. That's one of the fun questions that's how we end the podcast. He can't be an official guest if we don't ask that. So we don't really have any questions coming in. So we're going to get to some of the fun stuff now. First thing, the Art of Bombing Spotify playlist. If you guys are watching right now, we do have a Spotify playlist called the Art of Bombing Get Pumped for Comedy. It doesn't have to be comedy, but do you have a song that gets you pumped that you want added to the playlist?
Do you already have Bang Your Head or Mental Health by Quiet Riot?
All right. Mental Health or Bang Your Head?
It's the same song. Like, it has two different titles. I don't know why they did. It's one of those. But yeah, I've used that as walkout music and stuff like that. And it's, it's great, man. It's 80s metal. And it's all back when metal was like, baby, I love you.
Right. Yeah. So you want to hear something kind of funny about Quiet Riot? I actually, so my dad's been big into music, right? My entire life, he's been big into music. And when I was like 8, I can't remember if it was my birthday or Christmas, but like, I think it was my birthday, but my 8th birthday, I got this boom box, and my dad gave me 2 cassette tapes with it, brand new cassette tapes. One, Ray Charles Jr.'s Ghostbusters soundtrack, and the other one, Quiet Riot, Come On Feel the Noise.
Oh, yeah, baby. Dude, that's
pretty freaking amazing. Freaking amazing. And then, so I did see we got another question that came in, but before we get to that, I want to ask you, I always, we talk about bombing, but I like to know if you have, what was your favorite show that you've done so far?
Man, that's a good one. And I knew this question was coming, and I didn't think about it enough, but, I did a show. This would have been, it would have been before COVID. It was a show on my birthday where I went out with a couple of comics and we went out to some really small town in like northern Kansas, and it was a bar show, and it was kind of the opposite story of the one that I told before, where you walk in and everything's set up perfectly and it just all turns to shit. This time I was like, okay, well, like I walk into the place and there's a guy at the bar and he's like, He's like, "Is that your wife's coat? You know, because it's like a parka." And I was like, "All right," you know, and he's wearing flannel and stuff, and he's gonna kick my ass. But ends up being an awesome show. Like they brought the entire town into this bar. They filled it up. Everybody was just excited to see comedy. Just slayed. It was great.
That's awesome. Those are the kind of shows. That you love. That's exactly what I was talking about. Where you have low expectations. You think it's going to be terrible, and ends up being so fun. And then you go in, you think, oh, this is going to be so great, and it's not. Got another comment from Preston. And aren't you lucky? He says, I slept in a vehicle 2 nights this last weekend on a gig. So
Preston, he's he does a lot of he's mixed a lot of shows. Preston's he's a musician that can play any instrument. He can sing, and I've always looked up to him. And I've got a couple of jokes about him as I should. But he is always kind of lived that kind of road life and just loves doing. He's one of those guys that loves doing. He's like a professional roadie that goes around with like Pantera and bands like that, and like I put lights in the kick drums, like, you know, kind of
that's awesome.
Like sets it up, mixes shows. He's he lives in Texas, which is where I'm from, with his wife and their kids, and he's a granddad now. So he's a grandfather and did that. Everybody put those two together. So
there you go. See, and you were talking about, you know, the kind of making it like, oh, you're the old guy. You're too old to be sleeping in your car. Well, you just proved yourself wrong.
In my face, man. This is tell you what.
You just proved yourself wrong. Yeah. All right. Well, it's the final question. The little game that I like to play at the end called Pick a Number. So you're going to pick a number between 1 and 20, and then you're going to ask, I'm going to ask you a corresponding question.
Okay. 14.
14 it is. What will finally break the internet?
Oh my God.
The only right answer. I was just going to say
now?
Yes, you can officially be part of the team because we are officially now on the same wavelength.
Now you have to pull the plug on this entire thing now so that it becomes true.
I was just about to say the only right answer is this podcast, but stream podcast, close enough. Well done. We're going to take one more question, and then I think we're going to wrap this up. If you have a joke that is about a run-in you had with a pretty famous comedic movie actor, how well known as a comedian do you have to be to name drop somebody that's already an established comedian? Oh, okay. I see what you're saying there. I mean, you don't have to be famous. The problem is just because if you're a fan of comedy and you know a particular comic and maybe in comedy, they are a famous comedian, not everybody might, you're going to run into the part where people might not know who they are just because they're famous to you and famous to some circles. Not every audience is going to know who they are. And so then if you do a joke and you name drop, they're not going to be able to relate to the person necessarily because they might not know who it is. So there's no point of reference for them. So that's where you really got to watch out. Will they know who this person is? But if you have a funny story about a celebrity, if it's true or whatever, and you want to do it as a joke, I mean, they're a character in it. You don't have to, unless you're going to make them look really bad and they come after you for slander or something.
Right.
I think you're safe.
Yeah.
What do you think, Josh?
I think you said it right there when you talked about, hey, if it's something true, and it ties back to a point you made earlier in the show, like if it's true and it happened to you, you're working from behind material. You've got that, and you can definitely tell the joke. Me personally, I never see celebrities because I just don't notice things generally.
It's like you're too busy listening to your sets and taking notes and being in your own head, trying to get better.
I'm working on
you're
a joke,
being a
Kevin
professional.
Bacon, get out of the way. Yeah, I don't know. my wife she would walk around with me in New York and she'd be like, that was Kevin Bacon right there. And I'm like, how many celebrities have I missed? Like, because I didn't see him at all. He walked right past me.
That's hilarious. That is hilarious. All right. Well, I think that is going to do it. Just to remind everybody, December 5th, 2021, 4:30 p.m. Central Time will be this was our first official live stream, but that'll be our new day and time. We're going to try to maintain that schedule and try to do every other Sunday. But just to let everybody know, January may be up in the air. I am moving to Denver. So depending on my schedule and how that all goes.
Congrats, everybody.
Yeah. So, but we are definitely going to do our best to try to keep the stream live portion consistent. And we're still going to be recording in studio. And we're, lots of great things coming for the Art of Bombing. And everybody, this is a good time to welcome Josh to the show. You can do that, in the comments. So,
awesome.
All right.
Yeah,
we've got awesome show. Safe movings. Dan, thank you guys so much for tuning in and supporting the Art of Bombing. Make sure you go to artofbombingpod.com. You follow all our social medias for the Art of Bombing. For Josh, he's got his Facebook page. I got mine. Do all the things. And most importantly, tune in next time.
Absolutely. December 5th. I'm excited, man. I'll be here.
I'm excited.
Let's get that guest in here. And
we're doing it. We're doing it.
Do.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Night, guys.